Let's jump into today's webinar. Um, Before we get started, of course, I have to thank just one moment here. I have to thank the folks who are sponsoring BECC, including especially the Arthur Vining Davis Foundation and SMUD, but all the folks that have come on as partners, supporter, or friend sponsors, sponsoring this solution session, the lanyard, the music night, and of course, just added Sabriz as a friend and exhibit sponsor. If you want to sponsor, let us know. Send us an email. Where the sponsorships for the conference and these webinars are still available. My name is Ruben Sussman. I'm just here to welcome everybody and tell you about the conference. I direct the Behavioral Health and Human Dimensions program at ACEEE, also Bear Hub. I co-chair BECC, and I work at ACEEE. So before we get started with the webinar, I want to let you know that the BECC conference is back. We're in person again after 2 years, November 2nd to 5th in Sacramento at the Hyatt Regency. And I urge you to go to the BECC website, beccconference.org. You can read about all the sessions that are going to be there, as well as the keynote and the spotlights. It's a great place to look. And very importantly, please register before August 1st so you can get the earliest price we have available, that I should say the lowest price we have available, the early bird, and save $100. If you register on August 1st or later, you will miss out on the savings. And also, we have another webinar in our series. The next one will be September. It's about communicating climate change on social media, featuring Jacob Simon, an independent video creator with over a million views, followers, I should say. Brain being weird. And it's going to be moderated by our own Beth Carlin. So for today's webinar, use the chat for questions and discussions throughout the webinar. We love to see people chatting. That is a very important function of the webinar series to bring people together. We'll have time for questions at the end, and you can use both the chat and I don't see a Q&A function, but if you have a Q&A function, we will examine both the Q&As and the chats for questions at the end. The recordings will be available on the BECC website, so you don't have to ask about that. Just rest assured, we'll be recording it. We'll be sending it to everybody who registered, and it'll be on the BECC website after this. So without further ado, let's talk about improving home energy upgrades with insights from households and the construction industry. I'm going to turn it over to our moderator and BECC co-chair, Therese Beffer. Go ahead, Therese.
Great, thanks, Ruben. We're excited to be presenting our first webinar here. I'm also a co-chair of BECC, and I work for UC Berkeley, the California Institute for Energy and Environment. So I would love to just get going on this and introduce our two speakers today. Ian Walker, currently the leader of the residential buildings team at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab with annual research funding over $5 million. Ian is an ASHRAE Fellow, leader and developer on standards and technical committees for ASHRAE, ASTM, ResNet, IEC, the IEA, and other national and international organizations. He's a board member of the IEA Annex 5 Air Filtration and Ventilation Center. And Nuria is an architect and construction engineer trained at both UC Berkeley and the Polytechnic University of Catalonia. She is currently a researcher at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, where she focuses on the intersection of the built environment, indoor environmental quality, and occupant health. Her research aims to enhance both the energy performance and non-energy impacts of residential buildings, particularly through retrofits that prioritize health outcomes. And with that, I will hand it over to Ian to kick this off. Thank you.
Thanks very much for those great introductions. And we're going to talk today about surveys, and I'll give a little bit of background first as to why. This was instituted by the Department of Energy several years ago, where we talk about how do we get to scale with energy retrofits of homes and how we make things affordable. And one of the things we realize is that it's not enough to have great rebate plans and things like that. We need to motivate people, and we need to motivate both households who make the decisions and the building industry together. And the mechanism we're going to talk about today about how do we think about that and learn about it is to do surveys. And Nuri and I are going to talk about a couple of surveys, one of households, one of industry professionals. And I'm going to start out talking about the survey of households. Then Nuria will talk about the survey of professionals and look at some comparisons. I need to acknowledge that this study was actually led by Chrissy Antonopoulos at PNNL and not by LBNL. And if Chrissy was available, she would be speaking today. But lucky me, I get to be here. So a little bit background to this homeowner survey is that, as most of you probably know, if you're attending this webinar, is that people are complicated, and it depends. The answers to questions are not the same every time you ask them. It depends who you're asking, depends on socio-technical things, and where are people coming from. There's all these factors that influence not just what we do, but how people think about their homes, whether that's what are their buildings like, what community are they living in, things like their income, their cultural background, and so on. So when we are giving you results in the study, we're giving you often the median or the average or somewhere in the middle. We all have to bear in mind that there's a large variability, and we will try and capture some of that in our discussion. So this survey of households was 10,000 households all over the country, did a survey. And then there were some very, very detailed interviews with a subset of 120 of those households to try and dig a little bit deeper into some of their responses. And what we're trying to figure out is primarily, what motivates people to do things in their home that are energy related. And particularly, here we're talking about renovating and upgrading existing homes. And how do they make decisions about, individual technologies, or what are the specific things that they want to do to their home? How do they decide between doing different things? And I'll start out with sort of a quick overview about, what are common things that people do in their home. We've got a chart here that shows, and we split it out between owners and renters, because as you can see, there's quite a difference in responses. Looking at typical renovations to homes, you can see that most of these are not energy related, right? The first three are just making your yard or your kitchen or your lighting look nice. That's a primary motivator for changes in people's homes. Let's make things look nice. It's until we get to the second group where we start thinking about, well, things that use energy a lot, like heating, cooling, and hot water, and so on. And the last sort of group at the bottom of the chart there are more about what we might call more sort of technological approaches that aren't just simply, do I have a heat pump, right? And you can see, not surprisingly, we get different responses between owners and renters, which is probably not, again, not a surprise, because of course owners have a lot more agency in all of these decision-making processes, right? And of course, these sort of more visible things that, people that you see when you go to a house are the things that people change the most. Kitchens in particular get remodeled all the time, right? Often for aesthetic reasons, or things are just worn out, but kind of less so for energy things. They get renovated a lot less in a home, often because they're invisible. I mean, who goes to look at their furnace or their heat pump or their water heater regularly, or is proud to show that off to people when they have their friends over? It doesn't happen, right? And this is sort of a key aspect of decision-making process in households, like how and when do they do things, and what are they interested in changing? When we dig a little deeper, looking into motivating factors for specifically about energy-related things like building envelopes, adding heat pumps, things like that. Often these things are combined together, right? Often people do a renovation of a home that is both, let's say, insulating an uninsulated envelope, and at the same time replace the heating system. That's probably, again, no surprise, but we found out that was something that came out of the results. There are big roles to be played by the financial side of things, like household economics. Are there great rebate programs and so on? And is there financing available? But there's a bunch of non-energy factors that I think we're going to talk about mostly over the next 20 minutes or so, and we'll get into those in a little while, that really influence these decisions that we think of as being energy related, but there's a lot of things that impact those energy related decisions. And the sort of right-hand column there is talking about some of those things about, what are people's preferences? What are they prioritizing if they're going to do something in a home? People want to have a nice place to live in, right? That's sort of the first thing. Again, the kitchen comes up. the aesthetics of a home are super important. And also things like safety. Um, this is something that has come up over again. Sort of the health and safety aspects of things is sort of these sort of nebulous things that are hard for us to evaluate. But people talk about it all the time. Everybody wants to live in a safe home. And when people are making decisions, sure, cost is important, but people also care a lot about what are the benefits and features of the various appliances they might add as an energy upgrade or an upgrade to a kitchen or what have you. And we sort of broke things out here in the chart I'm showing you. We brought the responses into like two fundamental areas where people it was really important, a little bit important, or the yellow is people don't care so much. And if we rank these things, a bunch of things sort of float to the top about, is what I'm doing something that can be repaired? Is it a safe thing to do to my home? Does it result in less maintenance for the home? Are there health risks associated with this? And specifically, people have concerns about bringing in stuff into their homes. They want their homes to be healthy, and that is, reflected in these results. Of course, the people think about cost, which is the next thing that is obviously important. And not just the cost to install, but also the cost to maintain whatever you're installing in the future. And then the last thing we wanted to highlight was this idea about, is it better than what I have? This idea of if you're going to spend some money on a home, you want to feel like you're upgrading something. Is the house going to perform better? If we look specifically at some non-energy factors, comfort and safety for pets and children, it comes out by far the highest, probably not surprisingly. People are willing to pay for a home that is safer or more comfortable. Secondly, if something breaks, they'll, replacing water heaters when they fail. That's going to be a priority, right? Nobody wants to go for a long time without hot water. Or if it's the winter time and your heating system is failing, whatever it is that fails, people will replace them. And sort of third in line here behind those things was this idea of making a home nice to look at, the aesthetics of it. And this is where we start to get people thinking about things like energy. The first two things are not particularly energy related, but energy does come in after these things. And this figure is a little bit trickier to sort of interpret here, but basically we're looking at how often did these various things, how often were they cited as a factor in making decisions about what to do in a household? And we have just some sort of generic terms there. We're looking at different things that happen. But again, this sort of reflects the comments I made earlier about people want to make their spaces nicer. They're interested in integrating new technologies. Sentiments are more about how people feel about things. Those turn out to be very, very high ranking, right? And there are other things like, what are your neighbors doing? That would be included in things like peer influences, for example. What's slightly concerning, I guess, is that, the sources of information, that did not come up very big on what do you use to make decisions. We always talk about if only people had more information, were better informed, all the decisions would get better. And we found out that might not be the case, in fact. Like, obviously, more information is better, but is it a decisive factor? Possibly not. And lastly, before I hand over to Nuria, I want to talk briefly about this intersection with contractors, which Nuria is going to take more about. This study found that only a small fraction of households are participating in any particular programs. And this sort of goes back to that, do people have information? A key source of information for most households when they're doing things related to energy is the contractor that they work with to do the work. And we think that having contractors get better at informing occupants about things like, is there a program that will help you out, is a key thing. There are some programs, here in the state of California, of the tech program, where this is a key part of the program, is engaging the contractors as well as households in knowing this program exists, understanding how to navigate the paperwork required. Contractors are playing a key role there. The second bullet is something that we've heard as a concern just generally in the construction industry, not just about energy upgrades, but generally the construction industry, is it's sometimes really hard to find people to do the work. And this was in almost a third of households said it was really challenging, if not impossible, to find contractors to do the work they wanted to get done. It's currently quite difficult to find the right contractor. And while I've talked a bunch about all the things that might influence decisions and motivations for people, I think we do have to acknowledge that things like once you've figured out what's motivating people, the barrier to achieving the things that they're motivated to do can still be considerably affected by the cost. Probably not a surprise. But what we're trying to do here is kind of separate out those two concepts about a barrier to doing a lot of things might be the high upfront cost. But the decisions that are made aren't just based on that. There's a lot of other motivations going on about the decision process, and they are kind of different things when we're talking about people's behavior. And I will stop talking there, and I will hand over now to Nuria to go through the rest of the presentation. Go ahead, Nuria.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me also? Yes. Okay. So Ian has been talking about the high-level summary about the results that PNNL got from the survey that they conducted some years ago on households decision-making on those energy retrofits. In parallel, in the same years at LBNL, we decided to conduct another survey. We love surveys, and at this time, we conducted a survey addressed to the building industry. And in that survey, we wanted to learn more about what motivates and deters energy retrofit projects in today's market. But also we wanted to learn more about, promising strategies and technologies. But importantly, we wanted to learn also more about these non-energy benefits, about these co-benefits that we might find behind those energy retrofits. In that survey, we got approximately 250 participants across the country, mainly contractors working on single-family retrofits. And also, this survey was organized in different topics. The idea behind was to learn from the building industry about their experience on those energy retrofits. And also, we wanted to learn from the building industry what's their opinion, what's the opinion they have from households when they want to retrofit their homes. And also, we look from the building industry, their input on challenges, barriers, promising technologies, work scope, and project costs for performing these energy retrofits. So I'm going to go very fast through the next few slides because this is not the main topic for this presentation, but what we have learned from that survey. First of all, cost is the main barrier, no doubt. I think that I'm not saying anything new, but also we learned that the main motivation of homeowners to energy their homes based on the building industry point of view is slightly different from what we thought, because we learned that households' decisions to pursue energy retrofits are not only based on simple financial analysis. We learned at that time that issues or things such as non-energy benefits or co-benefits from those retrofits, such as health, thermal comfort, etc., are important motivations for households, both renters and also owners. And also we learn in the results that traditional metrics related to return of investment or payback probably are a bit misaligning with what households really are interested. Also, from the building industry, we try to learn more about their barriers. Obviously, as I mentioned before, cost is the main barriers, followed by lack of consumer demand, lack of workforce, unforeseen conditions, etc. And also, we learn from the building industry about which are the most common causes of project cost increase. And we learn from them that unforeseen conditions from existing buildings, especially structural problems, unexpected problems, are the main ones that may create an increase in the total cost of the retrofit. So, okay, after this effort, we decided to go for a comparative analysis in order to learn more about these perceptions and behaviors between households and professionals in these energy retrofits. And in this effort, we try to answer questions related to about what motivates households and contractors in deciding to retrofit a home. And also we try to learn more about how the construction industry supports retrofits for households, and also what are the top strategies to scale those energy retrofits for households and the professionals. So at the end, in this comparative analysis, we wanted to learn more about what contractors are offering and what households would prefer to have in their retrofits. I'm going to give a quick note here. From now onward, all the results in orange color are related to households. All the results in blue color are related to contractors or building industry. And all the results in all the graphs are sorted by households from the largest to the smallest result. So when we look in the comparison to the key barriers for the building industry and households, we learn that for households, the most important barriers are related to workforce and lack of materials. And for the construction industry, we learned that lack of workforce is the main issue. Obviously, for both, cost is a problem in these retrofits, but definitely for the construction industry, really needs more programs to develop skilled people to work in these retrofits, able to implement this technology for those retrofit projects. Yeah, and one thing that we learned in this project that was a bit a contradiction is to see that households found a barrier, the fact that it's difficult for them to find the correct equipment and materials in retrofits. So these results obviously is not aligned with what we got from contractors, that they didn't find this as a problem. And we assume that households, many times they consider to retrofit or to install equipment by themselves at home, but they don't know where to find those materials. Obviously, the contractors know, but the households, they don't know where to get these materials or equipment. So here we found one of the first gaps. Another thing that we look at in this comparison was about households' priorities and motivations. And here we found notable discrepancies between households' preferences and contractors' perceptions. For instance, households' main motivations by far, and this was a big surprise for us, is that they are very into enhanced building resilience against extreme weather events such as heat waves, big storms, etc. However, contractors' perceptions on which are the most motivations or priorities for households to retrofit a building, they thought that they retrofitted because they were interested in improving comfort, financial payback, or save money in utility bills. Again, households' motivations differ from the perception given by the building industry in this interest in enhancing resilience against extreme weather events and making homes sustainable and green. Another thing that we had to highlight here is that financing was highly rated by the construction industry, but contractors perceive more complexities compared what households really answer about that topic. Improve comfort and save money on energy bills were rated similarly. and also reducing on fossil fuel were rated in a low result, and we assume that there is a gap of knowledge on that topic. In terms of advanced technology for energy retrofits, we learned that this study tried to reveal disparities between contractors and households in the prioritization of advanced technologies for energy retrofits. For instance, contractors' interest in advanced technology on retrofits are related to retrofits for healthy homes, smart technology, emerging heat pumps, home electrification. On the other hand, households, they are more into retrofits for healthy homes, smart technology, and emerging heat pumps. We found interesting to see that households have not really a gap of knowledge related to home electrification. Probably something that we should pay more attention, or the construction industry should pay more attention. Another thing that we have observed is that the construction industry is able to identify solutions such as air sealing, real-time monitoring, or window replacement as part of these retrofit efforts, but probably these are not well rated results. So we assume that the construction industry don't consider these retrofit efforts as part of advanced technology, especially also households. However, households are very, very into heat pump technology and smart technology, but they don't consider the replacement of windows or air sealing as solutions for those energy retrofits. And another interesting topic here is that we found that households, they rated in a very low the solution of to have backup home power solutions at home, such as generators and batteries. And I'm going to go back because I want to remind you that is probably a contradiction, considering that one of their main interests for households is to retrofit for building resilience against extreme weather events, such as heat waves, but they rated very bad the fact that they can have a battery at home. So we assume that there is a lack of knowledge on this type of technologies. So for households, the motivation is to live in a more sustainable environment and a healthy home. However, the building industry thinks that households want to reduce the energy bills. Another thing that we have been able to identify is that construction industry maybe has an opportunity to improve their message in selling retrofits for health, because households have this interest of those co-benefits, especially for having a healthy home. And we think that the construction industry may have here a gap to fill in improving their message about those retrofits. Also, we found this contradiction and how households are motivated to undertake retrofitting for home resilience, but they don't have any knowledge or consideration about installing a backup solution, which is obviously a contradiction. Also, we have learned that the building industry shows concerns about financing. For households, this is a contradictory response showing minimal interest. And this discrepancy obviously shows how building industry should focus on other factors to promote those retrofits to households. And also, we want to highlight the fact that cost, as I mentioned before, is the main barrier, but ways that we have been able to identify to reduce cost is about being able to control this time management from design to construction of these energy retrofits. So recommendations for the industry, very quickly, definitely we had to align this messaging between households' values versus contractors' perceptions. Definitely, there is a possibility out there about enhancing these non-energy benefits or co-benefits of these retrofits, mainly focus on thermal comfort, health, etc. Obviously, we need more incentive, rebates, financial possibilities for everybody. We need to develop and communicate resilient retrofit solutions to households. There is a gap there on knowledge. We have to invest in workforce development. I'm not saying anything new here. And also, we have to prioritize products that are affordable, is easy to install and maintain, and also to help reduce process timelines. So just finalizing, based on this effort, we observe that there is this interest and need to learn more about these non-energy benefits or co-benefits from these energy retrofits. And our current work in the lab is that we are trying to outline different frameworks that will help us to quantify these non-energy impacts. And right now we are focused in this health-related approach. And for that, we are using the DALI. The DALI is a well-known public health metric, and DALI stands for Disability Adjusted Life Year. I'm not going to enter into details. If anybody has questions about this topic, I'm happy to answer as well. And basically, that's all. And thank you. So if you have questions.
Really fantastic. Thanks so much, Ian and Nuria. So I'm going to read a couple of questions from the chat, and then we'll move to the questions in the Q&A. So please, all of the folks participating, our audience, go ahead and add more questions in the Q&A as we get going here. So one question is for you, Ian, from Bill. Why do you suppose energy bill savings were on the list? You showed a list of the things that were important to households. Why wasn't energy bill savings on that list?
Simply because we asked a lot of questions of a lot of people, and that sort of summarized their responses. And I think it's just indicative that although for some households energy bills are really important, for some they are not. And the other thing is that, of course, it doesn't mean that no households are interested in their bills, right? The results that I showed are just some high-level summary results, and that we're just picking out sort of the median of all that big range of results. But so many households are not concerned, but some are. And I realize that's a subtlety probably behind all of these results. Whenever we ask individual people, what concerns you, what's important to you, you always get this big range. So I apologize if that felt I was misleading anybody in any way, but I want to be clear that that's behind all of the results that both Nuria and I have shown, is that when we say something, when we rank these things and something doesn't appear, it doesn't mean it's not important, right? There's almost certainly a subset of households for which that is the only thing that matters, because maybe they live in an old house in a hot part of the country and their AC bills are killing them. For them, they would definitely rank it high. But for many other people, it's not such a big deal. And I realize that's a very sort of wiffle-waffly answer, but that's unfortunately the nature of these sort of studies, is that we do get a broad range of results and we present things at a high level. If we had more time and could be more technical, of course, we could show you the distributions of responses. And if people want to dig into that, maybe that's a thing for another day. We could look into some of these, pick a couple of topics and get into a lot more detail. So again, I apologize. We're just showing the high level results here.
Yeah, great, Ian. Michael asked, did you look at how long a family expects to live in that dwelling, and how that impacts how motivated they are to, get some stuff done?
I don't think that was a specific thing that was analyzed in the household study. I would say sort of a pseudo answer to that was, as expected, we did see a big difference between people who rent a home and people who own a home. And we know that renters do not live as long in a property as owners. They have less agency. it's not their place to invest in. So there's definitely that separation, but we don't know about, do people's attitudes change if they know they're moving next year, right? Are you going to invest in new windows if you're moving next year? A great question. We probably know the answer, but I don't think that was part of the analysis that Chrissy and her team did, and I have not seen any of the results that Nuria and I have been looking at with our PNNL colleagues that would we just don't know the answer to that specifically from these data.
Thank you. Yeah. And can you remind us, when was the survey on the households done and when was the survey on the contractors done? Like
The
just a
household
rough.
survey was done 3 years ago, right?
2022, around
Yeah,
that time.
about 3 years ago. And the other survey was done a couple of years earlier. So back in like 2020,
Okay.
2021. So this is old data, but you know, as recent, it's the most recent data we have, right? We don't have
Right.
anything from this year, for example.
Yeah, Jeremy asks, is the study located on the BECC website? And I would have to say no, but can you provide references to study that if you've published any of this already,
Sure.
either on Chrissy's end or on your end, if you could, I think people would be very interested in looking at the data and looking at the analysis. So,
Yeah,
For sure, we can put some DOIs in the chat. There's been a couple of full-on journal articles published, one by PNNL on their data set, then another joint one between PNNL and LBNL. So that's the long answer to yes, and we'll share those in the chat.
oh,
Um,
awesome. Okay.
also, I'm going to share in the chat our website in the lab. There is the publication section where everybody can download any document there. So yeah, there they
yeah,
can find,
sorry.
but
Great.
I'm gonna put the DOI to the PNNL article. I'm pretty sure because they're a fellow national lab that they also make everything publicly available. So if this is going to a journal where you have to pay to read it, and I'm not sure that they made it publicly available. Do you know, Nuria?
they have everything available.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'll put that in the chat right now.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Or actually, better yet, you could answer the Q&A. Oh, yeah. Well, we can
Oh,
copy it over. Yeah, that's
sorry.
easy to do. No problem. Another question, Michael. How do we reconcile that access to information was not a major decision factor, whereas information on costs, benefits, contractors were all significant barriers?
Can you repeat again? Sorry, what is this one?
So how do we reconcile? So on the one hand, it seemed like access to information was not a major decision factor. I think this was for households,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the information on costs, benefits, and the contractors, trying to find the right contract, were significant barriers. Thoughts on that?
So my thoughts are, indeed, that sounds contradictory, right? It's like, how can both of those things be true? And I think it depends on well, a couple of factors. So I think we have to be a little bit careful about when we present these sort of results about how were questions asked and what specifically was the question, right? And for this one on information, I think there's a dichotomy because in one case we're asking people how easy was it to get information? Sort of one question. And the other question is, if you have information, how much did it influence your decision? And those are two, they're not quite the same question, right? And they get answered differently. And I would say that there was another plot that I was going to share, but I cut out for time, which looked at where people got their information from, for example, right? Which is
Okay.
it's in the PNNL journal article, and I guess we could have put this in a poll at the beginning. What's the number one source of information when people want to do things to their home? The answer is it's their friends and their family, right?
Actually,
And I'm just reading off the chart here. Online reviews are next. So people trust online reviews, sources of information, before things like retailers, definitely before government websites, much more so than contractors who are down near the bottom. And sadly, for any manufacturers who are dialed in today, uh, manufacturers are just not seen as a source of good information when people are thinking
I'm
about
going to
what
say
to do.
something about this, Ian, because
Yes,
I
go ahead.
remember when we conducted the comparative analysis, we learned that for households, it's very important. Uh, my neighbor told me or suggested or recommended whoever to help
Mhm.
me with the retrofit. So no, the reference can be whatever online platform, but what whoever I know recommends me, that's a very important factor for people. Probably is one of the most important ones. The direct recommendation from people.
Yeah, I think that just reflects human nature, if I can be,
Yeah.
reductivist about it, right? Is who do people rely on? Mostly it's friends and family, right? They're going to be the people that you go to first if you're trying to make decisions about life in general. And it turns out it also applies to when people are renovating their homes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks. Catherine asks, were you able to analyze household data by income? And were motivations barriers different based on income?
Nuria, do you
Uh,
recall? I'm going to pass that
Yeah,
over.
the PNL conducted that
Yeah.
analysis, and yes, the answer is yes. There is, I don't have now on the top of my head the results, exactly the results, but the answer is yes. They conducted this classification based on income because it was one of the questions they had about what's the income of the household in order to understand what decisions they were making or not.
And would that be in one of these reports, either the
Yeah,
joint
it's the
report or the
results that
P&L?
are one in the reports. Yes, for sure.
Oh, excellent. Okay, that's really good. Let's see. Question about, can you clarify about household motivations for making upgrades? Okay, so Ian, you mentioned comfort, safety, repairing, replacing something broken, improving appearance. And Nuri, you
Oh,
presented
okay.
resilience against extreme weather. So it seems like there was a big difference
Yeah, there is
there.
first of all, um, we had to combine both surveys, and both surveys didn't have the same questions.
Ah,
So
okay.
we were focused only on the common questions. And in the construction survey, we didn't have questions about aesthetics or things like that because we were more focused about technology, construction process, and so on. So there were questions that, from both surveys that they didn't overlap for the reason that was not there. But again, one of the surprises when we overlap both surveys is to see this high interest in to retrofit for extreme weather events.
Yeah, that I was very surprised to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Great. Okay.
I think if we'd done this survey 15 years ago, we might not have seen that. I think that it's just extreme weather is so much more in the news these days, and people are so much more aware of it. Um, so that's why it pops up, right?
Right. Yeah. And then a similar question here on correlations between, or to the previous question, were there correlations between main motivators and household income wealth? I think you may have touched on that.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have that at my
Yeah.
fingertips, but you can read the report. Do you have anything at your fingertips, Nuria?
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No. Because again, this is not something that LBNL assess. This is something that PNL assess, and to be honest, right now is not. I'm
Sure.
sorry.
Okay. We'll
Yeah,
go to the
if
report.
Chrissy
Yeah.
were here, she probably has
Yeah.
all of those results in her head, right? Because it was her team that led that work. So we can punt and say Chrissy will answer all of your questions next time.
Oh, excellent.
But
Yeah.
to be fairer to the audience today, there is discussion of this in the papers that Nuria and I have linked in the chat.
Great. Okay. Can you confirm the surveys were of California households and contractors? I think you said it was nationwide, but this
It is
is
both
All over the
surveys.
country.
all
And
over
it
the country,
was
Stephanie. Okay,
very,
great.
very evenly distributed. Basically, for the household survey, it was split into, 5 chunks of the country: the West, Midwest, Central Southwest, Southeast, and Northeast. And they had roughly even contributions from all of those regions.
Okay, excellent. Yeah.
Right. So there was no one area of the country which had a lot of respondents compared with another. Um, because we do have that problem in other research. I think that's what the question is getting at, right? About the certain parts of the middle of the country that are often underrepresented. They were not underrepresented in this study. And that was deliberate, by the way, on the part of the research team. They deliberately wanted to reach out evenly across the country to households.
Okay, and now we have two questions about DALI. Kieran asks, can you explain the DALI metric and why that would be relevant to track for household contractors? And Bill asks, can you share whatever data you have about how DALI quantifies the health benefits of heat pumps, insulation, or other upgrades?
Mm-hmm.
That is going to be a bit long. I will try
Oh,
to summarize. Yes, I'm going to try to explain a bit the concept of DALI. It stands for disability.
disability adjusted life year.
Thank you. And DALI, I mean, all of us, we are born and we have more or less a healthy life on average. And at some point, all of us, we are going to experience a disease. This disease might be chronic or acute, but that disease might reduce our life expectancy sometimes. And DALI quantifies a bit that there is, considers that the reduction of life expectancy based on a specific health issue. Very high level summary, okay? So what we are doing right now is to translate that DALI number, which is a public health number, into the fact that if we install something at home for our retrofits, how it's going to affect to our DALI number, our life expectancy. Let's put it in this way. It's a new area and it's related to health costs. And in reduction and also we is trying to assess this health burden. So it's related to or connected to all these points.
So, and to answer sort of the second part of the question, it's sort of an indirect thing. So there's been studies that have looked at the impacts of health when you say make homes better to live in by insulating them, putting in better windows, air tightening them, putting in better space conditioning systems, on and on and on, right? And those are, we sort of understand that they're quite well quantified. And so we can say if across a population, if you were to improve the thermal performance by doing this, this is what you can expect to see in changes in health outcomes. And we calculate, as Nuria said, the metric we use is DALI. That's a standard metric that's used to analyze these things. But the work that we're doing now, and that's more about, say, comfort and maintaining temperature. That's more associated with building envelope things. We're also looking at what if you burn less stuff in a house, right? If you that's an indoor air quality thing rather than a thermal comfort thing, and looking at the health impacts of changing exposure to contaminants based on that. And that's work that's currently in progress. We've already done some work that was just looking at the building envelope improvements for energy purposes, and now we're looking more into does it matter what equipment is in your house that is for heating or for cooking or making hot water, whatever the thing is, right? That's currently work that we're doing for DOE. to try and assess these what we call broadly non-energy impacts. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, seriously, it's not a small number, right? Because public health is very expensive in this country. And the classic example is if you can invest, let's say, a few $100s in someone's home in such a way that their child doesn't have asthma attacks and doesn't have to visit the ER anymore. We talk about financial things and paying that. It pays back the first time the child does not have to go to the ER. If you had to pay that actual bill, that pays for a lot of upgrades to a home. And there are a few programs that have been piloted around the country where healthcare providers are actually investing in fixing problems in people's homes rather than treating sick people because it's much cheaper. And
Mm.
as people who are all invested in the public health system, whether you have private insurance or not, right? And also your private insurance rates depend on this, right? If you don't care about public health, you should still care, right? Because if we can improve public health with these things, the cost savings there, although they're a bit squishy, compared to here's the bill you get from the electric company, they're so large, right? Usually much larger than anything to do with an energy bill. If people look at, what they spend on healthcare in a year, whether you're insured or not insured, you're generally spending more than your energy bills. And so that's why it's become sort of a lever, if you will, that says, well, if we can cut public health costs by X, that's worthy of an investment here in Y, where Y is improving the energy efficiency of buildings.
Yeah, great. Great. Another question, Miriam asks, did you collect any gender disaggregated data in either study,
We
either in the
always
We
households or
always
contractors?
collect gender information, but I don't believe that we have specifically disaggregated between the two. So the
no.
short answer is no. We also I did show the difference between, say, owning and renting, but we've also done analyses that look at the difference between, say, urban and rural
Oh,
environments,
oh,
right?
neat. Yeah.
What else we did? We did, I think education level was one, race another, household income was definitely one,
Yeah,
size of
gender.
household, right? So we have all those sort of breakdowns, but we haven't done analyses to show here that would show all those breakdowns to see if there were any. It is a good question though to look at, are there significant differences with all those different variables, right?
Yeah.
If you because
Great.
if you're going to have targeted programs, you might want to know who to target, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Do you have insights? This is from Aaron. Do you have insights into why households knew about or were excited about heat pumps compared to other solutions? How deep was the level of knowledge on pumps themselves? How many insights there?
I think the simple answer is in general, people are not particularly. It depends. I'm not sure what the question. If the question is about, how does the technology work? I think most people, A, don't know and B, don't care. They would like a home to be heated and cooled, but actually how it happens, when we talk to builders, this is sort of not part of this official survey, but when we talk to builders, about these things, that's what they tell us when they're when they talk to potential new home buyers. Most people don't really care if it's a heat pump or not. What they care about is, will I be comfortable every day of the year for the next 50 years in this house? Right? And also, does it cost me twice as much if we do A or B?
Right.
Does it add, say, $100,000 to cost the house? Going to be like, no. But generally, no. And most people are not engineers, right? They don't care how it works. I think people are mostly agnostic
Mm.
on
Mm.
how home is heated. There are certainly behavioral issues, though. For example, modern high efficient heat pumps would just love it if you don't touch the thermostat.
Right.
Leave
Right.
it at
Well, we can have
70
a whole conversation
all the
about
time,
that, Ian.
right? We'll come out, but if you don't do that, if you have big nighttime setback, they turn on the electric resistance heat, and you throw away all of your energy efficiency. And that's a behavioral thing which we're not talking about today, but we'll come back
Yeah.
another time.
Yeah.
So,
No, one of my
so,
favorite
so
subjects.
knowledge
Yeah.
about heat pumps does matter in that context, but we did not evaluate that in this survey.
Right. It does seem like heat pumps have been much more mentioned in the news and in general. And so it does seem like maybe more people know what that word is maybe
Awareness.
now
Yeah.
compared to 3, 5 years ago. I don't know if that's where this question is coming from.
I think
Yeah.
particularly in states that have offered rebates for heat pump installations,
Right.
it's
Right.
not just the money, right? It puts it on everyone's radar about this is a thing that could heat or cool your house.
Right. Yeah. Let's see. A couple last questions here. One was about if how the responses from the homeowners, what they value would be different compared to like, depending on when the survey was administered. So for
Oh,
example,
okay.
during 2020, we're thinking about the pandemic, so health concerns might have been primary. The other comment
Yeah.
about if you're surveying right in the middle or right after an earthquake, wildfire, flood, whatever, then the resilience to extreme weather events is going to go up. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's 100% correct.
Yeah. So
People
people
change what they're
answer.
concerned about pretty regularly, depending on what's happening right now. And again, this is a human behavior thing. We react the most to the most recent thing. Time is a big discounter, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I, sorry, go ahead, Therese.
One question was about the age of the home. Was that considered in this analysis?
Um, Again, it's one of those many parameters that were recorded, but we don't have
Yeah.
a detailed breakdown of of that. I I noticed Alice had one more question I'd like to get to, asking
Oh,
about
yes. There was a
renewable
comment,
battery
really.
storage. The short answer, Alice, is that we just had very, very few homes where there was any battery storage at all. And it's such a new thing, to be honest. If we wait 5 years, I'm sure battery storage will be something that comes up, but it didn't come up at this time. It's just too new.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank our speakers again. The fantastic presentation. Really very interesting. I look forward to reading the reports. I'll hand it back over to Ruben to close us out.
Thank you, Therese, and thank you to all the speakers. And I'm so sorry to share my screen and just kind of jump on like this, but with so little time left, I wanted to make sure everybody remembered that we have another webinar coming up on September 25th on communicated climate change on social media, and that you should definitely register for the conference. If you're going to go, register before August 1st, so you save that $100 and get the earliest possible price. You can see the agenda on the BECC website, beckconference.org. Thank you again, Therese. Thank you, everybody. This has been fantastic, and we'll see you at the next one in September.